And for sure, tonight we are talking all about injury. Were you involved in a car accident? Did somebody hurt you and it wasn't your fault? Do you have legal questions? Well, we got just the guy for you tonight. That is our topic, all about injuries. Joining me now from the law firm of Reeves and Medier to go over all of that, your friend and my friend every Saturday night in one shape, form, or another, Jim Dog. The Bulldog, Jim. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Jim Reeves, the Bulldog here. But the simple fact is you have made a very good career out of helping people when they've been injured, all sorts of injuries.
Yeah, and that's what we do. Largely, we do insurance disputes and other business litigation too. But bread and butter, what we cut our teeth on, what I've been doing for 30 plus years are injury claims. And really, at this point in the career, serious injury claims. People are either killed or seriously injured. That's what we do day in and day out. And when you have an injury, it can affect you and your family forever, depending on how severe it is. And it's very important that you make the right legal moves, especially early in the case.
Right.
I talk about that a lot on the show, but that's critically important because it will determine in large part what kind of recovery you ultimately have 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years later.
Right. The phone lines are open. That is our topic tonight, all about injuries, 896-0713 or 1-800-349-0713. That toll-free number is good from Long Beach to Lucedale, Laurel, and all points in between. We'd love to hear from you tonight. Jim, when you talk about the serious injuries, of course, everybody your mind kind of automatically goes to car accidents.
Right.
Just the speed and the weight, it just lends itself to that. 18-wheeler accident. What else is out there that you work on with injuries that produce, I don't want to say big results, but have big cases with
catastrophic type of injuries occur in all kind of settings, but what I deal with primarily are commercial trucking accidents.
Sure.
The size and weight of those vehicles usually has, if it's an impact, it's a terrible impact.
Sure.
And usually somebody's severely hurt or killed. Offshore injuries, great jobs, but dangerous jobs.
Right.
By and large. And so a lot of injuries out there. A lot of injuries out there that on their face maybe don't seem severe end up being severe because they limit somebody's ability to work.
Right.
And even if it's not, something to put somebody in a wheelchair, if you can't go back offshore and work at the high wage job that you had before, it's a large claim, and it's going to affect you and your family.
And when you say offshore injuries, of course, the anniversary of the BP. How do you even describe that? Ooh. The Horizon BP explosion and oil, all that. That anniversary is, gosh, is it this week, next week? It's coming up very, very soon.
Next week, I think.
I think it is next week.
And when you look back at it, Kenny, between that decade there, between Katrina and BP, the worst natural disaster in the history of our country was Katrina, and the worst man-made disaster in the country, right behind it, and both ground zero right here.
Right this
coast, right?
WLOX, LawCall, the whole area.
Lucky us.
Yeah, everybody, we're all in this one together for sure. So for sure on that side.
Hope we see neither one of those
ever again. So that's our topic tonight, all about injury. So if you've been involved with any type of injury that wasn't your fault, somebody else did you wrong, we want to hear from you tonight. And someone did you wrong. Yeah, that's serious. That's serious right there. So let's get to our first email question of the night. It came in from Tia, Jim. This is not maybe quite catastrophic, but one that I can identify with for sure. Tia said, my older sister was involved in a car accident in which the other party definitely, I love that fact, was definitely at fault. Her medical bill was $3,500 plus $3,500 in lost wages. She's a 38-year-old female. What would be a reasonable settlement for her? Tia, great question. Jim, is that enough details for you to kind of, you probably get a few more details.
Need to use a little bit more, but look, I can give sort of a ballpark answer, and I think what might be helpful here is to think of like lawyers think on these cases.
Okay.
And what we're looking at to determine what the potential value of a case is. It's a lot of variable factors. It's not a science. A lot of it is the experience in the venue where the case would be filed.
Okay.
What a jury, all we're doing as trial lawyers is looking at what is the likely best day in front of a jury, and then what is a reasonable settlement with that being likely the end result. And if you can usually settle for 75% of what you might get at trial, 2 years from now, probably usually smart to do it because you have you get rid of the uncertainty, time value of money, that sort of thing. But to get the question, here's what we look at. So in any personal injury case, you're entitled to your past medical expenses and then your future medical expenses.
Okay.
Your past lost earnings, your future lost earnings, pain, suffering, and other things, what we call non-economic damages, disfigurement, loss of enjoyment of life, that kind of thing. Okay? So the two components that are missing in the question here are we know what the past medical and lost wages are. We have no idea what the future is.
Right.
And the future is usually the larger part in a serious injury. So this doesn't sound like a lot, and if this was all we were going to have, would not be a tremendous claim. It would be a serious claim. It certainly should be compensated.
Right.
But for instance, if the doctors were saying that this person was never going to be able to go back to work again at her job,
sure,
then, and she's a young person,
right,
then it could be very well be maybe a 6 or 7 figure case. Okay?
Gotcha.
Even with numbers as small as this in the past.
Wow.
Same thing with the medical care. If the doctor said that's all we've got today, but this young lady over the course of the next 10 or 15 years is going to need a couple of 3 additional surgeries, maybe a knee replacement, hip replacement.
Right.
Then you have a case where it's worth a lot more. And that's why you need a seasoned attorney who's handled, not only been around a long time, but handled these kinds of cases, because all those things have to be considered when deciding what ultimately to resolve the case for.
Excuse me, Jim, that's the, in a nutshell, isn't it? It's what is the next step on this thing? Because what was a minor knee injury 2 years from now could, like you say, be a knee scope or a knee replacement. And I guess that's the hardest part for y'all, isn't it? Kind of the future cast.
It is, and sort of it's a little strange, too, because that part, at least in terms of injury cases, largely we're lawyers, we're in a courtroom, but it largely depends on medical opinions. Okay?
Right.
It depends on what the doctors are likely to say this person's medical needs are going to be in the future. Is she going to need physical therapy? Is she going to need a surgery? Is she going to need multiple surgeries? Is she going to need a replacement? Is she going to be able to go back to work? Is she going to be able to go back to work doing anything or a job just earning less than she had before?
Sure.
All those things have to be calculated or put into the calculus when deciding what to settle the case for.
T, a great question. I knew as soon as it came through Google this week, I said, "Oh, that'll be a great one for tonight on Jim's show."
Can we help you with? Long time, first time, gentlemen. During all that weather last week, I got into a car accident. Another car came up and rear-ended me. The other driver was saying that it was their fault, or excuse me, that it was the rain's fault. But in my opinion, it was clearly their fault. The weather did not impede. Is there anything that I can do?
Great question. Great question. There was a lot of rain. No doubt about that. I mean, it was pouring.
And I hope, I'm going to mispronounce his name again. I hope he's not hurt. I hope the injury is not too serious, first and foremost. But look, this is sort of the thing. Everybody has opinions. There's a saying that goes along with that I won't repeat. But the opinion that matters in these cases is ultimately the judge and the juries, okay?
Right.
And so, of course, you could do something about it. So rain is in conditions like that sometimes do cause wrecks. But it depends on whether a person is acting reasonably in the rain. So, for instance, just an example, if the speed limit's 50 miles an hour, it would be reasonable to travel 50 miles an hour in good conditions. If it's pouring down rain where you can't see 10 feet in front of your car, probably shouldn't be going 50, probably not reasonable. If this person was, they're probably still at fault, rain or not. And so I hear this all the time where people say, well, I'm not at fault. He says he wasn't, so what do I do? Well, what you do is that's why they build courthouses. You litigate, and so you try to resolve with the insurance company. If it's a minor injury, try to do it yourself. If it's not, or you're not sure, consult with an attorney. We do it for free, and then you hire an attorney on a contingency basis. It costs you nothing unless you win, and then ultimately, if it can't be resolved, it goes to a jury trial, and a jury decides it. But I'll tell people this all the time too. People think, well, as soon as I hire an attorney, I'm going to have to go to court. It's going to be this big ordeal. But 97% of these cases,
97%, folks, 97%,
give or take, will settle before trial. Okay,
Jim.
Most civil cases settle.
For our caller there, should he get his insurance involved first? Does he need to talk to an attorney at the same time? What call does he need to make this week?
Any and all. Okay. So let's just kind of start. Let's go through. So, anytime you're in an accident, if it's you have property damage, even not a personal injury claim,
right,
you need to alert your insurance company. Why is that? People all the time will say, well, It wasn't my fault, so I don't want to have my insurance rates go up. I don't want to say anything to my insurance company.
Yeah.
Wrong answer, okay? Why? Because in almost all the policies of insurance, you're required to put them on notice of a potential claim so they can adequately investigate it. Guess what happens if you don't tell your insurance company?
They don't know.
And 6 or 8 months later, you get sued. Your insurance company has usually a provision in the insurance policy that says if you don't put us on timely notice where we can investigate, we can deny your coverage. And now the coverage you paid for all these years, they don't have to defend you and they don't have to settle your claim for you. You're on the hook for it personally. So you need to alert your own insurance company first of all.
Okay.
And then you need to, if you have any type of a serious injury or you think it may be serious, pick up the phone and call an attorney who specializes in this kind of work. We'll talk to you over the phone. We'll give an assessment of your case. We'll have you come in if we think it merits that. And then at least you're dealing somewhat on equal ground with the adjuster because the adjuster who's on the other side for the insurance company has handled thousands of these cases probably. You've never handled any. And guess who's usually going to win that fight if you don't get some assistance. Okay?
And it's something, Jim, you talk about all the time. Sometimes you have to kind of quarterback the beginning of this process.
That's right.
You got to contact your insurance agent, and maybe contact the attorney. Unless you call in the LawCall, Jim's not going to know about it on that side. So
that's right. So
really do appreciate the call in tonight, and it poured last week, no doubt about it. I mean,
sounds like we're going to get it again tonight.
Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of rain right now on that side of time. All right, I'm going to look at my producer, see if we got enough time to go to our email question. I'm going to say we do. Let's do the email. All right, Den asks, Jim, kind of switching gears from auto to industrial. He says, I was at work in an industrial workshop. I was wondering if I could get compensated for the burns I received on the job. I have scars on my arms and my feet that will never go away. Really interesting question here.
Interesting question, and you know, over the years I've handled a lot of burn cases, and for some reason they seem to come in spurts. I have a number of them, you know, half a dozen or so probably, maybe 10 in the office right now. Burn cases are maybe the worst kind of cases.
Right.
I mean, a serious burn is a terrible injury, a disfiguring injury, a disabling injury, a painful injury.
Lasts a long time.
Yeah, it lasts forever and really are devastating cases if it's a bad burn. Doesn't sound like this maybe is too serious a burn, but
sure.
But the short answer is, of course, you can recover. So sort of 2 avenues for you here, and I'll lay those out. So one, if you're hurt on the job, you have what's called a workers' compensation claim. That means against your employer, regardless of who's at fault. Maybe nobody's at fault. Maybe even you were at fault. If you're hurt during the course and scope of your employment and you're not horseplaying and you're not on some kind of, you're not drinking or on alcohol,
sure,
taking alcohol or something, then you're entitled to workers' compensation, which means 2/3 of your average weekly wage plus your medical expenses.
Okay.
Now, if your burns are serious enough, you would have a potential claim against maybe a product manufacturer. For instance, I won't name any names, but I had a case against a welding torch manufacturer some time ago.
About a year ago,
on the job injury and exploded, malfunctioned. And so you have a claim potentially against the manufacturer of a device that may have injured you. If there's another subcontractor or another worker out there, or subcontractor or some other person that's working for somebody other than your employer, you have a potential claim against that company as well. And you can recover all of your potential damages there: pain, suffering, future medical, past medical, full lost wages, past and future. So that's the avenues. There's really 2 or 3 ways to look at it. And what's going to drive that a lot of times is how serious that injury is.
Dens, it sounds like you need to call an attorney on that one. Like 30 seconds left in the show. I guess really you just cannot sit on your rights, can you? The clock is ticking.
Yeah, let's talk
the moment.
Let's talk big picture here. So we've talked about different types of injuries. In an injury case, typically Mississippi, you have 3 years from the date that you were injured or should have known that you were injured. Could be as short as a year, though, depending on who the potential defendant may be. The theme of this is don't sit around. If you have a serious injury, you need to call an attorney, contact an attorney sooner rather than later. Don't sit on your rights.
Absolutely. Speaking of the clock ticking, we are out of time for tonight's show. It goes so fast every Saturday night. Really do appreciate it. We'll be back next week with Matthew Medier talking about more of your rights and injuries and laws and everything on LawCall. But until then,
good night.
Good night.